How's it going, people? I'm back with another video, guys. It's been a while since the last one, and I think it was when Arsenal lost to Liverpool way back in maybe March before the international break. And yeah, I'm really happy to be back, guys, with this video. And a lot's happened, hey? So obviously the Premier League season reached a very exciting climax on the weekend, and Manchester City won the title, of course, just edging out Liverpool in a very climactic ending to what was a phenomenal title race between those two awesome sides. For Arsenal, we were obviously involved in our own battle with Tottenham Hotspur, the rivals, North London rivals, and unfortunately for us as Arsenal fans, Spurs pipped us to the post and finished in 4th position, just ahead of Arsenal, 2 points ahead. Can't remember the exact point tally. I think it was maybe 71 for Tottenham and 69 for Arsenal, in that area. But nevertheless, Antonio Conte's side were able to just show a little bit more know-how, consistency, and big game mentality towards the end of the season to just supersede Arsenal, basically. I think that was the difference between the two teams. So let's break it down, guys. I want to do a little bit of a analysis of the last 12 games since I did my last video, and also more of a micro perspective on the climax of the season. So what happened in the last 2 to 3 games for Arsenal. So let's take a look at things, people, dating back a little bit further then. So the international break obviously happened, guys, around about early April. And at that stage, I believe Arsenal were maybe level on points with Tottenham, but with 2 games in hand. It was something along those lines. Arsenal had a cushion, and then the international break happens. So in that time, there were World Cup playoffs, if we remember rightly. So I believe it was Ghana against Nigeria was one in the African World Cup qualifying, and obviously that involved Thomas Partey from Arsenal's point of view. He obviously represents Ghana. So I'll come to that in a second. And Kieran Tierney was also in action for Scotland in their playoff match. And again, I can't quite remember who that was against, but I know Kieran Tierney had 2 quite grueling matches for Scotland in that time. So the reason why I mention that, guys, is because Kieran Tierney and Thomas Partey suffer injuries very quickly after that international break. So Partey pulls up injured in the very next game after the international break, which was against Crystal Palace on a Monday night fixture. And Kieran Tierney, I think, actually went down in training before that game, so after the international break. And guys, it can't be underestimated, so it can't be overestimated, the scale of the impact that would have had on Arsenal. So in January, Mikel Arteta and the board, it's difficult to identify who had the final decision or who wanted what in terms of the transfer window, but nothing happened from the perspective of incoming transfers. So Arsenal were able to get rid of 6 or 7 players, either on loan or permanently. And we trimmed the squad down to roughly 20 players, 22 players, 19 in that area, leaving us a little bit exposed potentially to injuries. Now, such an eventuality did occur. So Thomas Partey, as I mentioned, Kieran Tierney. 2 key members of the Arsenal squad, 2 members of the leadership group. Kieran Tierney being touted as a potential future captain of Arsenal, and he's a very good left-back. He's one of the best left-backs in the Premier League, super dependable, solid defensively, very neat and tidy in possession, gets forward down the left flank, interchanges well with Martinelli, with even Granit Xhaka in that inner midfield central position. So losing Tierney was massive, and it meant that for the remaining fixtures, so we're looking, guys, at 3 plus 4 plus 7 plus 2 is 9. I believe, guys, for the remaining 10 fixtures, we would have been without Partey and Tierney. So let's just look at Kieran Tierney first up. So that meant Arsenal never really had a settled defence in those last remaining fixtures, or a defence that Arteta felt he could rely on. So Nuno Tavares was the deputy for Kieran Tierney. He's the only other natural left back in the squad. So he played his part, but was considered a little bit inconsistent and erratic in terms of his performances. So Arteta never really trusted Tavares, you feel, to fill that position and make it his own for those 10 remaining fixtures. So that left a problem from the perspective of a defensive structure, because Arteta needed to rejig things, he needed to move players out of position. At times, Granit Xhaka played at left back. Tomiyasu, when he came back from injury, played at left back. And it just never really felt settled. And it was a similar story, guys, in the centre of defence. Now, I feel like Ben White and Gabriel dipped a little bit in their standards in those last 10 games. Now, I think fitness was possibly an issue. I think both of those guys had little injury hiccups at certain points in those 10 games that we've spoken about. But I also think maybe the wear and tear of the season caught up with them a bit. I think perhaps Arsenal's streamlined squad meant that Arteta didn't have the luxury of rotating those central defenders as much as perhaps some other teams. We've seen Liverpool, for example, use Van Dijk, Matip and Konate. We've seen Man City use Stones, Laporte and Diaz. Even Tottenham, they have 3 central defenders. So they've got Romero, Dyer and Davis, and they sometimes bring in Davinson Sanchez. So Arsenal have been very reliant on Ben White and Gabriel, and I think they honestly look really tired and or carrying a little injury in those remaining games. So that became a bit of an issue. Cedric deputised very well for Tomiyasu. So Tomiyasu is obviously Arsenal's first choice right back, and he's honestly, guys, been my favourite player at Arsenal this season, along with Bukayo Saka. So Tomiyasu for me is an absolute warrior of a defender. He's so disciplined. He's very good at tracking the runs of the winger that plays on that left-hand side. He's very good at shutting down the space, making it very difficult for the winger to go on his outside. He'll always really battle hard to make sure that left-sided player doesn't get around him. So he's a very tenacious defender, Tomiyasu, and having him injured as well was a big loss for Arsenal. So Cedric Soares did a good job in deputising for Tomiyasu, but when you have a second choice right back playing 6, 7, 8, 10, 12 games in a row rather than 3 and 4, all of a sudden you start seeing their weaknesses exposed. So what had been a very solid defensive line in the time, let's say in February and March before the international break, where Arsenal went on a winning run, it just got a bit broken up because of one guy getting injured, Tierney, and also a little bit of a lack of fitness from Gabriel and White, and also Tomiyasu being injured from even before that unbeaten run in February and March. So Arsenal had issues. And then, as I've mentioned, guys, Thomas Partey was another one. So when Thomas Partey goes down injured, Arsenal were then relying on Granit Xhaka, El Neni and Lokonga, 2 of those 3. Now, Sambi Lokonga is a young player, 21, 22 years old. He's done pretty well in his first season at Arsenal, signing from, I believe, Anderlecht. And I think he captained Anderlecht. And we've seen a lot of good moments from him. So he's shown a little bit of attacking adventure to his game. He's often put in good through balls, and he's shown good acceleration with his running. He often can drive through with the ball, running with the ball from the middle phase through to the attacking third. So we've seen a lot of good things from Lokonga. But that being said, in terms of having a a midfield combination good enough to challenge for a top four place. Maybe Xhaka, El Neni and Lokonga is not quite high enough in quality. So when Thomas Partey gets taken out of that midfield, Arsenal are a little bit worse off. Basically, they just don't have that same ruggedness in the defensive element, and also the same poise in possession that Thomas Partey brings. He's very good at distributing the ball and getting Arsenal's attacks moving quicker. I really like Mohamed El Neni. I think he does a good job of that, but I don't think he quite has Partey's passing ability. Maybe he's a little bit more conservative with his choice of pass. So Arsenal were a little bit hamstrung by not having Thomas Partey available. And then you move further forward, and the younger lads who have been Arsenal's shining lights this season, so particularly Saka and Martin Odegaard, I've been so impressed with those two. I think although they did have good moments in the last 10 games, particularly Saka against Chelsea, Nketiah, Arsenal's striker, he had great games against Chelsea as well, Leeds. These guys contributed, but maybe they just didn't have enough energy to really cement that spot that Arsenal needed to be a dominant goal-scoring outfit. You felt that maybe they just, in some situations, couldn't quite rise to the occasion, particularly in those away games towards the end of the season against Tottenham and Newcastle. So let's get on to that, guys. So let's actually break down exactly how the results unfolded for Arsenal from the beginning of April. So there were 3 losses in a row against Crystal Palace, Brighton and Southampton. Disappointing. And I think as a fan at that point, even with 7 games still to go, Tottenham looked far the stronger of the two teams. They were scoring goals, they were winning matches. Antonio Conte looked like he really struck a good rhythm and a good rapport with his players. And at that point, I'd kind of semi-resigned to the fact that Arsenal weren't going to make the Champions League. I was just really hoping that they didn't completely fold and then finish 8th like they had the previous 2 seasons. And then what happened after that was a real show of bravery and courage from Arsenal. I think the response was very strong. So they beat Chelsea away from home, they then beat Manchester United, they beat West Ham, and then Leeds. So they won 4 matches in a row. At that point, we were 4 points clear of Tottenham with 3 games to go. And I was believing, I genuinely thought Arsenal would go on and get 4th. I thought we would actually do it against Tottenham. I thought we'd beat Spurs. However, I did have a slight doubt in the back of my mind because I didn't feel Arsenal played that well in those 4 games, although we won the matches and against some good teams. Chelsea, very good team, same for United and West Ham. I felt there was an element of luck, maybe, that just fell in Arsenal's way, especially against Man United. So I watched that game and I felt like United were very easily penetrating Arsenal and they were creating a lot of opportunities. And if not for a missed penalty and a disallowed goal from Ronaldo that just didn't quite fall for United, I think Arsenal were able to just take advantage of a little bit of fortune in that game. Similarly against West Ham had just come off the Europa League first leg, and we caught them in between the 2 legs. So they were then going to go and play Frankfurt in the second leg, so they rested a couple of players, Souček and Antonio, although they did play Rice and Bowen. So I felt there that Arsenal took advantage of the circumstances, and full credit, I'm not saying they didn't deserve to win those games, because even the United game, I think Arsenal weathered the storm just about well enough and then scored a couple of good goals. At that point, I'm optimistic. I'm thinking this gamble in January that Arteta paid of not signing anyone and clearing the finances of the club by allowing certain players on maybe a higher contract or higher wages to leave, whatever. He put the balanced the book, so to speak. So he did a lot of good things from a financial point of view in January. But it was a gamble because Arsenal didn't bring anyone in. But with 3 games to go, I'm thinking, Arteta's done well here. He's managed to clear the squad. He's set us up well for the summer in terms of maybe having a little bit more of a budget, because he's been able to recoup some of the financial side of things. But unfortunately, it wasn't to be for Arsenal. Pressure slightly got to them against Tottenham with a couple of rash decisions, particularly Rob Holding with the sending off. And against Newcastle were bang up for it, people. Like, as much as Arsenal weren't at the races, I think credit has to go to Newcastle. I think they were really good. They were pressuring Arsenal. They were pressing high up the pitch. They were really charging down the Arsenal defenders and forcing them into mistakes. And yeah, you sometimes have to tip your hat to the opponent and say they were better on the night, and Newcastle were. And I don't think there's any issue with that. Sure, the timing doesn't look great because it looks like Arsenal have succumbed to the pressure of the top 4 race, and I think maybe that doesn't tell the full story. I think you have to give credit to Tottenham and Newcastle. I think they were just a little bit stronger. Maybe their squads just had a little bit more robustness, a bit more experience that enabled them to finish the season strongly. Eddie Howe, Newcastle's manager, he would have been bang up for that game, guys, because he wants to signal to the ownership that he's a manager of the highest caliber who can compete with Arsenal. So he had that incentive of wanting to send that message to say, I'm capable of managing a big club that wants to compete with Arsenal for the top 6 next season, top 4 next season. So Eddie Howe had a lot to gain and not much to lose. Newcastle, they weren't going down, they didn't have anything to lose, but they could go into it and be aggressive because they had everything to gain from a perspective of, this is where we want to be in the future. So Arsenal were on a little bit of a hiding to nothing in some respects. They were really in the pressure seat. And yeah, the pressure maybe did get to the guys. But I'm so happy, people, with how they rounded that season off with a 5-1 win against Everton. And I feel it's important, although it didn't amount to anything, Tottenham did their job winning 5-0 against Norwich. I feel it was an important way to sign off the season on a positive note, rather than going out with a whimper and losing 3 in a row. They've actually beaten Everton convincingly and restored a little bit of professional pride, a little bit of confidence that, hey, yeah, we can still play, we can open teams up. Odegaard got on the score sheet. His goal was the highlight for me, that little instep to the left and then passing it into the corner in a very deft way. I thought that was a wonderful goal. And Nketiah with an instinctive header, just showing the value he can bring to Arsenal next season. So I feel it was actually a really good way for us to end the season with that 5-1 win. Yes, Tottenham, they're in 4th place, but honestly, people, I think that's good for Tottenham that they got that 4th, and I think in some respects it will make the Premier League better next year, because I think Antonio Conte will stick around. So that means Tottenham will be more competitive. And a more competitive league is better. Even if it means that there's another team competing with you for that 4th spot, that's going to raise Arsenal's level, because Arsenal are going to have to improve. And that's what you want at the end of the day. Even if you're not beating these teams in terms of the position in the table, if they are helping you improve, then that's exactly what we need. So I think Arteta can take a lot of encouragement from this season. I know a lot of fans are disappointed with not getting top 4, and I am. I would have loved top 4, but I'm also looking at Arteta and I'm thinking the man has done a very good job this season, guys. Because if we think last season, there was a lot of instability. We finished 8th. There were even suggestions that teams like Leicester, West Ham had overtaken Arsenal, and that top 4 position was looking well and truly a thing of the past. What we've shown this season is, no, there's still optimism. We can compete. We've got young players coming through, Saka, Martinelli, Odegaard, even in the defence that I mentioned earlier, guys, Tomiyasu. So I feel there's definitely a lot of positives from this season, and there were patches this year where you saw Arsenal for moments in games or even sequences of matches where you thought, yeah, this team is good. Like, we're seeing some real identity. We're seeing a strategy, a style of play. Arsenal are passing out from the back. They're using the wide players. Martinelli on the left, he's making his runs down the left-hand side. We've got Saka linking with Odegaard. We've got Eddie Nketiah making these pressing movements to pressure the defenders. We're seeing an identity building here, and a manager that's worked so hard to re-engage the supporters, because I, as a supporter, guys, I was disengaged from Arsenal Football Club for a long time. Like, the latter stages of Arsene Wenger's time, and whilst Unai Emery did a very good job, and I'm a big fan of Emery as a manager, I still didn't feel the club had somehow unified. But there's been something about this season where I've noticed a real unification, a sense of togetherness, where everyone's pulling from the same hymn sheet. We've had wonderful moments, even the first leg of the Carabao Cup against Liverpool, the semi-final, where Arsenal held on for 70 minutes with 10 men, and you had Ramsdale and Ben White celebrating at the end. We've had Arsenal celebrating their away losses, going over to the fans, and whilst they attracted a little bit of, let's call it sour grapes from opposing teams that lost, that said Arsenal over-celebrating, for me that's great. We're seeing Arsenal caring again and going over to the fans and creating that bond. So these moments that Arteta has affected throughout the season won't be forgotten. It's very easy to look at the end of things and how things ended, and too often I feel that becomes the determiner of how you look at the whole. But if you really look at the story that's unwinded for Arsenal this season, you can see a very coherent club. You can see Arteta very much presenting Arsenal in a very dignified way with a lot of integrity. I love how he's conducted himself, by and large, people, this season. He's been very undeferential in press conferences, in the sense that he stands his ground. He doesn't succumb to excuses, I don't think. He's very strong in his responses. He demands the best from his players, but at the same time, he doesn't, I don't feel, overly pressure them. I think he's got the balance right between having standards, but also being a fair person. I think he's shown good ethics this year in some respects, Mikel Arteta. I'm thinking in particular about Eddie Nketiah, someone who he said, hey guys, I haven't been fair with Eddie. I haven't given him a fair chance. The guy wants to sign for Arsenal, he wants a new contract, but I haven't given him enough game time. But being, I believe, a man of integrity, Arteta's given him that time at the end of the season. We've seen Nketiah have 8-10 games in the first 11, so he's shown a little bit of that he's a man of his word in that respect. So I feel, as a result, people, he's really bought in the trust of a lot of his players. He hasn't got everything right, I don't think. So thinking a little bit here, people, about Tavares, about Lokonga, Maitland-Niles. So I know Maitland-Niles went out on loan, and I feel that Arsenal could have used him this season. I think he would have been a very valuable asset, especially in the second half of the season. But maybe Arteta felt that Maitland-Niles wanted the move, and maybe Arteta thought, you know what, I'm not going to deny him that, because I don't want to see Ainsley sit on the bench and be unhappy. Maybe he was thinking of what was best for Ainsley. So in that respect, it's an admirable thing to say, okay, Ainsley, maybe going to Roma on loan, you deserve that chance. But with Tavares and Lokonga, two guys that Arteta signed in the summer, maybe he could have used them a little bit more in terms of their substitute appearances, rather than leaving them out for extended periods, allowing them to maybe lose rhythm with their performances. And at times we saw with Tavares, there was a feeling of inconsistency around his displays towards the end of the season. Although, to be honest, I rate Tavares. I still think he's got something to offer Arsenal. Whether he needs a loan spell next season to build experience, that might help. But I do feel that there's definitely a future for him at Arsenal. So I feel, guys, a lot of positive things for Arteta and Arsenal. And moving forward, obviously the summer's very important. So Arsenal will need to recruit well. I feel 5 or 6 signings, again, like last summer, is needed. I feel 1 or 2 signings of high quality. Obviously, 6, like all the signings you want to be high quality, but that's unrealistic to expect 6 Champions League ready, experienced, high quality players, because it will cost too much, and it's just probably not realistic for a team that aren't going to be competing in the Champions League next year. So if we're being realistic, guys, if we can get 1 or 2 Champions League quality players, I feel that would be fantastic. For me, a striker slash a guy that can play on the left or right, so someone that can operate anywhere across the front line. Gabriel Jesus for me would be awesome. Now, I don't expect him to necessarily come now because of the fact that Arsenal missed out in the Champions League, but hey, if he was to want a different challenge, Arteta, he's worked with Jesus before, then maybe that would be a fantastic signing for Arsenal. And then in the centre of midfield, guys, I feel we would maybe need a different kind of player, maybe a high energy player that can come forward and run with the ball. In terms of who, it's tricky to identify, guys, someone who would definitely fit that role. I know Yuri Tielemans has been spoken about. Personally, I really like Calvin Phillips at Leeds. I think he's a fantastic central midfielder. He wouldn't so much bring the forward running element. He'd be more the sitting, reliable type midfielder who I think would complement Thomas Partey really well. So if it was up to me, those would be 2 signings that I'd make, maybe Jesus and Phillips. And then in and around that, Arsenal, I think, need to build a little bit of cover. So maybe, as I mentioned, guys, if Tavares was to go on loan, and given Tierney's injury record, another left-back would be important. And one that's been, who's come to my attention is somebody at Udinese, a left-back. I forget his name now, but he's the top scoring fullback in Europe this year. And I've seen some of his goals for Udinese, and they've been very impressive. I think it's Molina. I think his name's Molina. So he could be a real asset for Arsenal. And I know they're really in close monitoring of him. They want to get in touch with his representatives, etc. So I think those 3 would be awesome. Then maybe, guys, another right back, potentially Jed Spence, like a player who we saw play against Arsenal for Nottingham Forest in that FA Cup game. I think he'd be a really good player that Arsenal could get in. If not Jed Spence, then I've heard good things about Norton Cuffy, a young Arsenal right back who's been out on loan this year. And he could be a good understudy to Tomiyasu, and then Cedric as well, if he's still in the squad. But either way, I do feel another right back is needed. If Saliba comes back from his loan at Marseille, I think that would be fantastic for Arsenal to have another central defender of high quality. And then maybe you're looking at another striker. So I said, guys, Jesus can play anywhere across that front 3. Personally speaking, I really like Ivan Toney at Brentford. I think he's a very robust physical presence. He's ambitious. He's charismatic. He carries a bit of presence. And I feel that he's a good guy for Arsenal to look to sign because of that stature. I think he'd stand up in the big games and he wouldn't be intimidated. He wouldn't be physically bullied. I think he'd be a really good target man for Arsenal. I think he'd link up well with Odegaard, with Saka, Martinelli, etc., Smith Rowe. So guys, if I was thinking about maybe 4 or 5 signings off the top of my head, those might be it. Let's say Jesus, Toney, Calvin Phillips, Molina, and Jed Spence. I think that would definitely enhance Arsenal. And maybe some people might say we need more, but for me, that would certainly do it, providing Saliba comes back from his loan, etc. So definitely, guys, the future looks pretty good as far as I'm concerned. I think there's a lot to be happy about for Arsenal from this season. 5th place is a very good outcome, especially given the 8th place finish from last 2 seasons. Europa League is a great competition, guys. Why not go there and try and win it? Because let's face it, being in the Champions League, Arsenal, we probably wouldn't have won it next year if we're being real about it. Europa League, though, we can go into that and try and win that competition. Why not? Why not go and win it and try and win it? We've seen West Ham and Rangers have gotten close this year. So Arsenal, there's no reason why not. Add a European trophy to the cabinet. We haven't had any. I can't remember one. So why not go for that Europa League with a sense of opportunity? This is a chance for us to really win something big. And then target, obviously, a top 4 finish. Obviously, as high as we can get within the top 4 is better. And an FA Cup or a Capital Cup run, a Carling Cup run, but we would obviously need a deeper squad in order to challenge on forefront. So that is the biggest priority for Arteta, guys, this summer. And Edu, Kroenke, Vinay, the guys working behind the scenes. We need these 5-6 players again, maybe more, dare I say it, depending on who leaves. But yeah, there needs to be an injection of personnel, and obviously the better the quality, the better it will be for Arsenal. Okay guys, hope you've enjoyed this video. I'm curious to hear how you see Arsenal season. Do you see it as a success, as I do? Or do you think maybe with those 2-3 games in hand that Arsenal have perhaps missed an opportunity with Champions League football? Do you think Arteta's the right guy to lead the club forward? Personally, I think so. I think definitely give the guy another season, or at least see how next season goes till Christmas. If it's completely, the wheels are coming off, then I can understand conversations may need to be had. But for me, give the guy another year. He's earned it. He's done a fantastic job. So yeah, guys, shoot through your thoughts, and I'll try and do a similar video, guys, for the general Premier League season, because it was a fantastic season with a lot of highlights. But yeah, from an Arsenal point of view, guys, that's how I see things. Thanks so much, people, for tuning in. It's always a pleasure, and I'm going to try and keep these videos coming through again a bit more frequently. So watch out for those, guys. Stay healthy, people, and I'll catch you on the other side. Peace.